Before going into hibernation, an animal will often collect its food when it's abundant on the ground and store it up for the winter. So think of a squirrel collecting acorns. And then when the deep freeze of winter hits, it has this store of food to rely on. And some of the saints advise us to do something similar with our spiritual lives. So St. Ignatius, for example, would say that when you're feeling right with God and things are clicking, he would say, soak that in, really relish in it and soak it in so that you've got some goodness to rely on when the dark days come, which they will, because we're living on earth, and if earth is anything, it's a valley of tears, and the dark days will come. I remember one spiritual master I read about suggests coming up with what's called a desolation list. In other words, it's a list of things to think about and dwell on when you slip into a state of desolation. So you can come up with your own list, but here's a few examples of what you might want to add to that. So thinking, for example, that this desolation that I'm experiencing right now is not going to last forever. Or thinking that this desolation that I'm in right now might be a test to prove my fidelity to God, even during the dark days. So to come up with a list of spiritual acorns, as it were, for the cold and dark days of winter. And it's always a good idea to come up with this list when things are going well, because when the darkness sets in, we're often not in any mood to call to mind these things. In today's gospel, John the Baptist is having a down day. He's feeling pretty low, and he's in prison for doing the right thing, for standing up for Jesus. And he's questioning whether or not Jesus is the Messiah. And his doubts stem from the bad luck that he is experiencing. And so what does Jesus do? He gives him a desolation list. He says, look around you. The dead are raised, the blind see, the deaf hear. So basically he's telling John the Baptist to get out of his head and notice some of the awesome things that I'm doing around you. So try coming up with a desolation list, or as St. Ignatius would put it, create a memory stockpile of God's goodness, so that when the days of this low-level anxiety come, and they will, then you've got some spiritual golden acorns to help you deal with the winter.